Welcome to As I Live and Grieve, a podcast that tells the truth about how hard this is. We're glad you joined us today. We know how hard it is to lose someone you love and how well-intentioned friends and family try so hard to comfort us. We created this podcast to provide you with comfort, knowledge, and support. We are grief advocates, not professionals, not licensed therapists. We are you.
Hi, everyone. Welcome back again to another episode of As I Live and Grieve. Well, as expected, no doubt, you're going to hear me say, I have another great guest, and I do. We are going to start an adventure, all of us, around the world. We're going to delve a little deeper into sound healing. Now, I'm using the word healing, not therapy, and I think as our discussion goes along, you'll understand better why I chose that word. I have had the good luck recently to come across, I think, a total of 5 practitioners in the area of sound healing that undoubtedly are some of the best in the business. And later in our little adventure of a series of episodes on sound healing, we're going to talk about how to find someone who is a credible practitioner, because this is something that, just like any therapeutic intervention, you want to make sure you're getting one of the best. You're getting somebody who has practiced it, who fully understands it, and can best help you. Sound healing, as I'm presenting it, is intended to help alleviate some of the symptoms that you may be suffering as you grieve. And we all know, because I've said it, I'm going to grieve for the rest of my life. So with me today is Rich Goodhart. Rich, thanks so much for joining me today.
Yes, good. Thank you for having me.
Absolutely. Before we get started with my many, many questions, and there's probably one of those little toddler questions in there that I call it, could you just help our listeners get to know you a little better by telling them a little of your background, please?
Okay, this could be very long, but I'm going to keep it short. I'm a musician first, going back to early teenage years, and played keyboards, primarily piano, electric keyboards, organ, synthesizer, etc. And played, rock music, things from Led Zeppelin to the Allman Brothers to as my friends and I got better at it, we got into the art rock of the 70s, Yes, Genesis,
Right.
Gentle Giant, King Crimson, more adventurous music. And through all that, I was always drawn to the consciousness altering aspect of it. That it would take you somewhere and take you on a journey and bring you to different feelings and emotions and
Right.
experiences through the sound and the music. So skipping over a lot of my musical history, in the mid-'80s, I was studying at the California Institute of the Arts, studying music there, and was having issues at one point with kind of chronic pain and restriction issues with my right shoulder and arm, and had been to a doctor, which was worthless, and went to a neurosurgeon, which was worse than worthless, and went to chiropractors and massage therapists, which were temporarily worth something, but nothing offered me a fix and a lasting fix. And I then had an experience with, I was in the world music program and had a lot of friends who were drummers, and we were studying various ethnic drumming, African, Indian drumming styles and other things. And we had an experience, a group drumming experience one evening. And I happened to be at this point on like the lead drum, the center, the drum circle, and had an experience with the energy of the drumming where I felt at some point an energy rising up kind of. So I had this experience where I felt the energy rising up from the floor coming up through the drum and into my body, this kind of energy rising, and it moved through me, and it basically healed my shoulder in minutes. of drumming. This energy moved through me. And I say healed, what I think in retrospect, there was a stress, a tension, a wounding that was being held in the muscles, and it released it. It brought about a release that let it go. And over the next days and couple weeks, I would say that it was 90 to 95% gone, the
Wow.
issues that I had.
Wow.
And the remaining 5 or 10%, I had to just deal with myself. I had to
Sure.
take care of myself.
Sure.
It was enough there to just keep me like aware
Right.
of my own practicing habits and how I was using my shoulders. So
That
anyway, go ahead.
no, go ahead.
So that was my first real healing experience with sound and music. That was in the mid 80s. And I also began reading a lot on the spiritual and consciousness altering aspects of music, and found there were some books on the subject. Didn't really know about the idea of sound healing until the mid 90s, maybe about 10 years after the other experience, the drumming experience. I was teaching at a Sacred Arts Week in upstate New York and met a woman there, Sarah Benson, who was teaching sound healing. And it was a classic case of when the student is ready, the teacher appears.
Right.
And she told me that I was ready to begin studying with her. And I was, and that was it. And she became my friend and mentor and collaborator and cohort for the next 10 years until her own passing. And I don't remember now, 2007 or 2008. And that really initiated me deeply into the realm of sound and music as a form of healing medicine.
Yeah. It's no secret, I think, to anyone that listens to music that music will evoke, at the very least, emotions in people. You mentioned starting in rock, and you mentioned Led Zeppelin and many other bands. It reminded me instantly of my older grandson, Nathan, who's in a local band, Hush. It's a new band, been around for just under a year, and his favorite band is Guns N' Roses. And Nathan's been taking lessons for a while, and his instructor has said to him, "You have some natural talent." And Nathan remarked that he can feel the music. He becomes part of the music when he plays. He plays electric guitar. At any rate, I remember my own background. I was, from the time I can remember, I was in the church choir. Then in school, even before school, I started taking piano lessons. Then once in school and getting to fourth grade, I took clarinet. And then my girlfriends and I would dabble with each other's instruments and just play around. But music has always been a huge, huge part of my life. So it was perfectly natural when I wasn't feeling well. That is to say, after my husband Tom died about 5.5 years ago, that I was listening to music more than I was watching TV. I needed that because I knew that music gave me something. But it wasn't until I actually was doing the podcast and further along that sound was actually mentioned to me as a healing therapy. And I got a little curious about it, so I started doing a little bit of work. And I did have a guest at one time about sound healing who was a professor. But I kind of left after that episode. I kind of felt like, there's got to be more to it. And I started looking for people that I had confidence in as sound healers. And luck and Facebook, one of my good friends, brought me to you, Rich, and some of your cohorts in the sound healing category. And you were so kind to agree to come on and answer my questions. So here they come.
Okay, well, I'll agree to try to answer your question.
Oh, I know you can. There's no doubt in my mind. At least you will have more on the subject than I certainly do. You mentioned in your little bio there, your background about ethnic drumming and everything, and I think drum circles was probably one of the first things that I encountered when I started to think about sound as a mechanism or a modality, if you will, for healing. And the drumming goes way, way back, correct? It goes way back to the tribes, the natives of different countries with different types of drums. But
Yeah, as
was
far
it
as we know, yeah.
right? But was it really practiced in a healing sense,
Was
or
it?
was it, or was it more communications? Do you know?
I can't say that I know, anything like that specifically, but what is generally known is that it was used in different cultures all around the planet for all those things, for communication,
Hmm.
for work, working in the field, say, planting or harvesting crops or doing something. You can,
Okay.
there can be a drummer that has a rhythm going. You got chants going that
Right.
sync in with the work, that facilitate the work,
Right.
and then also for healing. Certainly shamans, native medicine people, which we collectively call shamans these days, but
Right.
the word shaman actually comes from people in Siberia. Uh,
Hmm.
it's an ethnic word that shaman is not a traditional word for South American medicine people or Native Americans or anything,
Hmm.
but we've come to use that word,
Right. Right.
So, but that's known in having been used for thousands of years in cultures all around the world. The drum has been one of the medicine person's uh, tools,
Mm.
often a
Right.
primary tool.
Right. And
The drum and with the drum and shakers and chant, that they
right.
go along with it.
Yeah, for some reason, I kind of imagined the drumming might have come first because, when you hit something with it, it makes that sound. And then I expect that at some point, they had maybe some, oh, who knows, bamboo or something, and they realized if you hollowed it out or if something was missing, it made a sound. And so on it goes. And I guess in the scheme of things, it doesn't really matter. But what we have now are sounds from so many different instruments or vessels, far more than I contemplated as a child in my music background. I did learn early on that there were different keys in music, and now I'm talking about traditional music here, not the sound type music. Um, and if it's a minor key, the song sounds a little sad. And there are certain types of songs like hymns in church. Some will have almost a march feeling that will just kind of give you confidence, that will kind of make you feel loyal, committed, dedicated, things like that. So I'm familiar with how music, our traditional music, where there's actually a melody and then there's harmony, those things to me are traditional music. But for sound healing, there's things like just a single tone or frequency from maybe a Tibetan singing bowl, or there may be just a chime, just a sound not connected necessarily with a melody or with harmony. At what point, I'm trying to frame my question correctly. Was there a point that it was decided that something non traditional, a series of sounds in a non traditional manner, could be better used to provoke emotions or sensations? Does that make sense?
I think it does,
Okay.
but I can't say at any point where that was decided.
Okay.
I don't think that is known, but I don't even necessarily think that it's true. That sounds, a Tibetan bowl or something. And yes, Tibetan bowl. But I gotta keep my own information straight. They're
Hmm.
really Himalayan bowls.
Oh,
They're
okay. I,
really
I apologize.
there's well, yeah. That's one of the sound healing world is loaded with misinformation. Some of it intentional disinformation,
Hmm.
to sell products.
Sure.
Other things are just things that have become commonplace that are not accurate. And the bowls are really not from Tibet.
Okay.
They're from the Himalayas in Nepal and
Okay.
in parts of India. But anyway, for one thing, just like with a bowl, a metal Himalayan bowl, it's definitely more than one frequency. There's a lot of frequencies in there.
Right. A
So
lot depends on the size of the bowl, right?
yeah, well, Ed,
And
I
thickness
have
and
two.
things like that.
Yeah, I have two bowls, for instance, that are the exact same diameter, the same height, the same shape, and thicknesses are slightly different, and they're hand hammered, so they're always going to be unique if you really look at them close. But they're two of the most similar bowls that I've ever had my hands on, and the low fundamental tone on both the bowls are exactly the same, but the overtones, the prominent overtones, are a quarter tone to a half tone apart.
Hmm.
Um, so they don't follow a harmonic series. They follow their own thing just based on shape and thickness and
Okay. Huh.
anyway, I'm kind of getting off the question there,
That's
but
okay.
point being that when you work with the bowls, it's not a specific frequency. It's not a harmony. And is it better than music? I think it's a different thing. I come when I really got involved in sound healing in the 90s, when it became a known thing,
Hmm.
instead of just working with music and sound and knowing that it had healing effects. I mean, I was
Hmm.
teaching hand drumming for a long time, and I was aware after my experience that I could use this to help people with physical problems
Okay.
with the drumming. But now I'm stuck. This is where I would say stop. Where was I going again?
I asked if it had been decided at any point that
Oh,
non-traditional sound would be more appropriate for healing.
yeah. Okay. I came at it, again from being a musician, and when I got into formally or officially studying sound healing and working with Sarah Benson, it was just seemed a given to me that sound healers were generally musicians as well. That has changed quite a bit now. There's, in fact, more of the people that I encounter who are involved in sound healing are not musicians. They're coming at it from just playing gongs or bowls or
Hmm.
using shakers and drum or something. Even with a drum, you need musical skill, at least a sense of rhythm.
Right.
But I come at sound healing from the perspective of being a musician first.
Okay.
So I don't know that just the sounds themselves are necessarily better than music.
Okay.
It's hard for me to separate those two.
Okay. And maybe it just makes more sense to say that music in general, and let's include sound and sound healing style or modality, is pretty much, it depends on the person. I'm going to listen to something and maybe get a totally different emotion or sensation than someone else who might listen to the exact same thing. Is that correct?
Yes, very correct. And
Okay.
that's one thing that some people in the sound healing scene have a very prescriptive approach. I'm not sure if that's the right word, but
Yeah,
it's
well, it
almost
makes sense.
yeah, it's almost a medical approach where for this ailment you use this frequency, you use
Right.
these sounds for this condition, and I don't see it that way at all,
Well,
actually.
I've actually seen ads out there that say words similar to that. That will let you know if you have this item, might be a tuning fork or something. If you have this item, this is going to heal your back pain. Just an example. I can't think of one specifically, but I know I've seen things like that out there on Facebook and around. So I would at first express to my listeners, you need to be cautious if you're approaching this and really find someone who has credentials, who is a credible person, and maybe even get referrals. Okay. Personal experience now. When I do research and I'm curious enough about something, I have to try it for myself. And it's no secret to my listeners out there that I am a natural skeptic. So I personally, other than grief in my life, I suffer from spinal stenosis. So I have chronic pain in my lower back, such that I can't stand for a long time. I can't walk very far without being in pain that starts to radiate, then really starts to increase in intensity. So I thought, all right, well, maybe sound can heal me, or, or at least make me feel better or something. So I had to start listening around and really didn't find anything. I didn't find a lot of recordings, and I'm saying I'm looking like on Spotify or something, anything that said sound therapy, I was listening to. I enjoyed it. I enjoyed the sound and everything, but I can't say I felt anything. That was until, Rich, I listened to a track you shared with me. And, I settled down. I got comfortable. I put headphones on, as you suggested. I made sure I was relaxed. There were no disturbances around me. I turned the lights off in the room and I closed my eyes so I could really focus, really listen. And I think you said that you used a variety of different instruments and vessels. And I listened to, I think it was about a 21 or 22-minute track of sound. And I don't think I have ever had so many emotions and sensations provoked in me as I did listening to your track. I felt at one point like my body, even though I didn't move, I felt like my body was reaching for something, just really reaching. And I thought, you have that moment where your brain gets sidetracked. I thought, what am I reaching for? So I stopped thinking about the what and just focused on I was reaching, my body was reaching for something. At another point, I had tears in my eyes and I was just kind of blown away. So then I thought, well, maybe there's really something to this. Do you have any thoughts before I ask my next question? Any thoughts about what I experienced?
Yes and no.
All right.
It's very personal. That 23-minute track that I
Okay. Yeah.
shared with you is, I've been a guest the last 2 years on the Shift Network's yearly Sound Healing Summit,
Okay.
and the one 2 years ago, actually on my YouTube channel, a little sidetrack here, but the one 2 years ago was an interview. I actually begin with just a very brief sounding intro for a couple of minutes,
Mm-hmm.
and then the rest is an interview. But this
Okay.
year, this year was primarily just introducing my sound medicine and then playing that track, which is what I shared with you from the Shift Network. Tying this in with what you previously asked me,
Mm-hmm.
I got a list of all the feedback from the participants, and I have a couple pages, maybe 25 or 30 comments, and a whole range of responses
Yeah.
from people saying, "Well, I liked his music, but it didn't do anything for me,"
Mm-hmm.
to to it being that was the most profound sound journey I ever experienced,
Mm-hmm.
and everything in between, from emotional responses to physical responses
Right.
to you know so tying in what you said earlier, it's very individual. It's not, I do not see or find or experience sound to be a prescription. When
Right.
take two of these pills and call me next week.
Exactly.
So what you experienced, well, first off, I'm honored and humbled, that you had that experience with my sound.
Thank
I never know. I can say whenever I do events, and I do group events, whether it's at a local yoga studio with a dozen people or it's at the Omega Institute where I'm playing to a room of 200 people,
you. Mm-hmm.
I always go into it. Part of me is just hoping that something will happen for somebody, that
Right.
it isn't a total bust.
Right.
And it never is, but that's kind of where my mind goes, with
Mm-hmm.
that. I don't know if anything's going to happen for anyone.
Right.
And I tell people about the possibility of a sound healing experience. And I
Right.
also tell them about the possibility of a shamanic journey and experience where the
Okay.
sound will take you into a state of consciousness where you have access to information and perception that may not be local to space or time,
Hmm.
meaning you might tune into things from the distant past, You might
Okay.
tune into something from the future
Mm.
that plays itself out in the coming days or weeks or months or whenever. Or you may tune into something that's happening now, but at a distance.
Mm-hmm.
So I talk about, all of these things are possible,
Right.
and you may not have anything. You
Mm-hmm.
may experience. I say the one thing that I guarantee you is that you will have an experience with sound.
Yes.
And
Yes.
what that is, it could just be a pleasant sound meditation.
Mm-hmm.
You may be annoyed by my sound. Someone else may listen to what you listen to, and they'll be, oh, I hated that instrument that you were playing. That was
Right.
really irritating me.
Yeah. And so much, I
So,
think, goes with our expectations too.
well, yeah, and that also brings up something that I often tell people at the beginning of an experience is the best way not to have a shamanic visionary journey is to spend your time trying to have one.
Yeah.
That'll almost certainly short circuit it. Is to be sitting there having expectations. The best experiences. Well, I can't say that it's the best. I don't know, but what I get from feedback from people seems to be that some of the most profound experiences happen when people have absolutely no expectation of anything happening.
Yeah.
And
And
and and
sometimes
yeah, go
it's
ahead.
tough to turn that expectation off,
Yeah,
you know. But
particularly
maybe that just
particularly
means
if you've
go
had a
ahead.
good experience. Maybe
Exactly.
you've come to my event one time and you had the most amazing experience, or it sounds like now with the recorded piece that I shared with you, you had
Mm-hmm.
a profound experience or a unique experience. Then if you go back the next time, oh, I want to have that again, or let me see what happens this time. You may not have anything. You may be
Right.
disappointed.
Right. But all that says to me is that it's not a one and done.
No.
You need to try. For example, it's not a prescription. You can't look up in a book and find out that this particular instrument will heal such and such, as you mentioned before. That being said, then, how does a sound healer function? How do you, like, if I came to you and said, this is my problem, is this something you think sound might help with? I'm not looking for a cure, I'm not looking for a magic bullet or anything like that. But do you think you can help me? How does a sound healer go about finding the right collage or collection of sound that might help that person? And is it a one-time standard, listen to this 27 times or keep listening to it every day for a month or whatever? Is it something like that, or does it change? Oh, there were a lot of
Well,
questions in that one,
yeah,
wasn't
there's a
there?
lot there. I don't know if
I'm
I'll have them all
sorry.
sorted out, but I, from my perspective, I mean, there are many ways to be a sound healer.
Okay.
Some of them I agree with, some of them I don't agree with. You can find books where you look up the frequency to cure this or that.
Okay.
That is not my way of working. It's
Okay.
not something I even agree with. But
Okay.
there is that out there. The way my best training with people like Sarah Benson that I mentioned earlier that I spent
Mm-hmm.
10 years with, and or Tom Kenyon, who's also I think a very powerful sound healer, and others that I've worked with, is cultivating your intuitive awareness, cultivating your experience with sounds, over time, working with sounds so that you get a sense of how sound works with people.
Okay.
But the training, again, my best training and where I come from the most is from this place of having cultivated a very deep, intuitive, nonlinear perception where you go into the sound repeatedly again and again over time and
Mm-hmm.
become familiar with the landscape of sound in a non-intellectual manner and how that works with people. It's kind of a
Okay.
very vague answer, but
No,
it also.
it's helpful. It's helpful. I'm hearing things I'm picking up from that is just like anything, you can't just instantly become a sound healer. It's something you have to work at, you have to practice, you have to understand, and you also have to work with people, each one different from
Yeah,
others.
yeah.
So you have to at least understand the foundation of sound in order to make an attempt at that.
In terms of having a foundation, there are trainings. Search people who claim certified trainings, become a certified sound healer, literally in 1 4-hour workshop. There are people that will, claim to certify you as a sound healer in
Okay.
1 4-hour workshop. My training, in my experience, was work with this stuff for about 10 years before you even think of
Right.
offering it to people.
Okay.
I come from, and Sarah never said that you have to spend 10 years doing this before you offer to the world.
Right.
But it was just what we did. We
Right.
worked, and it was something that you were apprenticing at for years,
Mm-hmm.
and developing the vocabulary, developing the awareness and the experience before you then start advertising it and charging people to come
Right.
to your events or whatever.
Right. Well, and this may not be a fair analogy, but just as medical school isn't a 4-hour session and you get your MD, we're talking about something here that is going to impact the individual significantly, or that's the hope and the intention, the expectation, if you will. So it
Yes.
shouldn't be
Right.
treated as a trivial matter as a 4-hour workshop. So I really appreciate you making that statement. And I want our listeners to understand, if you decide that sound healing is a modality you would like to look into a little deeper, make sure that the person you are reaching out to has invested that time in his or her practice so that they do have that solid foundation. Of course, to me, the simple matter is going to be the simple answer to that. If you want to reach out for sound healing and want somebody credible that you can believe in, then you just need to contact Rich because, I mean, let's face it, he's right here. And he and I have talked, we've chatted a few times. And if I were going to look for someone to work with me on sound healing, and I may, once my research is finished, Rich probably would be the one I would go to, or one of his colleagues. But for right now, to get me started, I think Rich is a great candidate. Having said that, Rich, our time is winding down. I probably will never run out of questions, but at least I have a solid network now where I can pose my questions. So I'm going to actually turn the microphone over to you and let you speak directly to our listeners without me interrupting you with 20
Okay.
questions wrapped in one sentence. So
Well,
go ahead. The microphone is yours.
I would like to start though by replying to one of the questions that you asked me a little while ago in regard to your own back problems and your back pain.
Yes.
I believe that sound healing could work significantly for you. It could work seemingly miraculously for you, but I also don't guarantee it. There's no way that I
Well,
can tell you that it will.
nobody can
Um,
guarantee it, but nobody should guarantee it.
Nobody should guarantee it. But I've had many people with shoulder pain, back pain, neck pain, often, if not usually, from known sources, from an auto accident or from some
Mm-hmm.
other kind of injury.
Mm-hmm.
And I'll just, one example, somebody came, it was actually something local where I was teaching Qigong classes. So I had like a 6-week Qigong class going, and one of the students came to a sound healing, and he told me at the next Qigong class that he had a back injury and chronic back pain as a result of that injury for 25 years.
Mm.
And he tried everything imaginable, chiropractic, acupuncture, massage,
Mm-hmm.
etc., and nothing worked
Mm-hmm.
more than the most temporary relief. And he came to my event and he was sitting in the chair, and he said once I got started, he was, enjoying the music, the sounds I was making.
Mm-hmm.
He was like, "This is nice meditative journey," but his back was really bothering him, and he thought that, I don't know if I can stay for the rest of this. I can't. It's too uncomfortable
Right,
for me to be
right.
sitting in this chair. And he said, but then I, I think was for him it was the flute that I began playing,
Mm-hmm.
and he said, you are following the flute and getting into what you're playing, and then you hit this note, and it was like a bullet shot into me, right into my
What?
spine. Yeah, the sound was like a bullet that shot into me, into my spine, into the center of that pain. And for a moment, it was excruciating pain. Then I heard and I felt a pop, and the pain was gone.
Oh my
And
gosh.
and here it was a week later at the next Qigong class, and he goes, "It's still gone." And I asked him, there were two more classes, so I asked him the next week, and I asked him 2 weeks later, and he said, "Yeah, it's still gone." And he said, "This is the first time in 25 years that I've been pain free
Oh
for,
my
at that point, had
goodness.
been 3 weeks."
Oh,
And I can't tell you that I did anything. It's not me saying,
I
"Oh, I got the
understand.
magic." I don't have
I
the magic sound. You
Well,
know.
and certainly that particular sound, if you could even identify specifically which tone it was, and you probably can't, there's probably no way you can, but yeah, that might not work for the next person. You're absolutely right. But
Yeah.
that's incredible.
But
That's
and
incredible.
I have plenty of stories like that.
Yeah,
And often and usually from people who again had no expectation going into it. They
right.
had
Yeah.
they weren't there to cure their pain. They weren't even thinking about that,
Huh,
and yet they had that profound experience.
right.
I'm aware of your time issue. I could spend the next 40
No,
minutes
that's perfectly
just
okay.
talking about those
It
stories.
might just mean you come back another time. That's all that means.
Okay.
Yeah.
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 But with that in mind,
Yes.
my response is, in terms of your own issues, it's entirely possible that a miraculous healing could occur, or a incremental healing could
Uh-huh.
occur, or nothing could occur.
Wow. But I'm one of those people that, and you mentioned, I've not tried acupuncture, but I tried something similar with injections in my back, and I've tried a number of very, very painful therapies, and nothing has worked. So you may have yourself a new client here. At any rate,
Okay.
um, let's wrap up. And again, the microphone is yours.
Okay. Well, first off, thank you for having me here. I'm glad this has worked out, and that my friends that I recommended to you I think, will really do your show justice.
I'm
Um,
sure they will.
and what do I have that I want to share with your listeners? I have a website, richgoodhart.com. That's RichGoodhart, richgoodhart.com, and you can find more information there. It's a lot of pages at my website. There are my CDs and albums. You can get other information on sound and sound healing and writings, etc. Events. My events calendar hasn't been up to date lately. With COVID, those events kind of came to a standstill, and
Right.
for other reasons, I'm not doing quite as much out in the world right now for various reasons, but there are still things happening. So you may find events announced there. I have a Bandcamp page, which is richgoodhart.bandcamp.com. And Bandcamp is a place where you can share music. And if you want my CDs hard copy, you can get them at my website. But if you are a digital download person, then Bandcamp is the place to go. And the other big thing that I would like to mention is, I've been teaching at the Omega Institute in Rhinebeck, New York, for about the past 25 years, most of the past 25 years. I've taught on staff, sound healing in various courses, and Qigong. I teach I'm core faculty Qigong teacher there, Qigong and Tai Chi. And I've done many, many evening event shamanic sound medicine experiences, which is where a lot of these stories that I have to share come, because I have had such a great audience there. And I've also taught catalog workshops. So I would just like to put in, this is the first time I'm announcing this publicly, is next August of next year, 5-day workshop, August 26th to 30th. It's called Master Level Sound Medicine Certificate Training, subtitled Exploring the True Heart of Sound Healing. And it's going to be a deep dive into sound medicine. And two things I want to say about that title, which could be misleading. It's a master, I consider it a master class training, but it's open to anyone, experienced sound healers or total beginners, people who don't even necessarily are looking to be a sound healer as a practice, but even just for their own work. It's the way the course will be presented, all levels can come and attend and experience a master level experience. And it's, the 5-day workshop is really 4.5 days, about, I think, around 22 or 23 hours of class time. And even with all that time, I am not certifying you as a sound healer. That, if you want to get certified, take the 4-hour class. I say that, yeah.
That's perfectly okay. I get it.
but a certificate is in the title, and we will offer a certificate of completion.
Right.
That you have attended this and you've completed this training.
Right.
Because I'll just add this. I think it's an important thing for people looking for sound healers. I'm hearing a lot now that places and venues that are hiring sound healers want people with certifications, credentials, certified credentials. Well, there are plenty of people offering certification, but there is no such thing as a legitimate certification in sound healing. To be legitimately certified as a massage therapist, as whatever the practice, there needs to be some kind of governing body that approves and issues certification and maintains certain standards and requirements. And no such governing entity exists in the sound healing world. It just simply doesn't exist. So yet there are a lot of people offering certifications. And again, it can be the 1 4-hour class, or it can be much more, there are others that are much more involved and much more serious and dedicated and quality work, but to say that you're a certified sound healer really means nothing to me without knowing who you've studied with and what the extent of the study is.
Right. And that's critical information. So, if you, one of our listeners, if you decide that you want someone to help you and you want to explore sound healing, perhaps, whether it's to alleviate your symptoms of grief or to help you kind of move forward in your grief journey, or whether for a physical, mental, or emotional problem that you yourself may have and just need some healing in general, make sure that whoever you go to has had enough experience and enough background in learning such that you feel comfortable with them, or it's very likely that it would be more likely that you would be disappointed, I guess is the best way for me to say it. And as I said previously, and I'll say it again, Rich has excellent background in sound healing. And you heard when he described his own little background himself, he started in music as a very, very young person. So he's had, well, I don't know how many, but he's had decades probably of experience in sound, which moved then into a practice of sound healing. So just be careful who you reach out to and do a little digging into background, ask for references, or maybe just attend a sound healing event by that person before you consider having them help you on a personal basis for repeat occasions or something. So I guess I've said that as many times as I can, and I will wrap up now. But
well,
I'll
just add, let me
go
add
ahead.
to that.
Sure.
Like you experienced just recently in the last few days, or whenever my recorded sound medicine, and you had the experience that you had, which I believe you indicated was something more significant with sound than anything you had experienced before.
Absolutely.
And there are those of us there. I'm not the only one operating at that level. I do feel, and I try to say this as humbly as possible, that I am one of the ones who are in kind of a smaller percentage of the sound healers
Right.
who are dedicated like this and who do operate at a certain level.
Right.
You may attend something with someone who has very little experience and they have some really nice bowls or gongs, and you may have a very good experience with sound. You know, it's entirely possible that someone who has no clue as to what they're doing can still do something where you have a quality experience with sound. But just, you know, again, as you said, ask questions, use your discernment,
Right.
and try, you know, check around. You know, maybe you experience something with someone, and you have that level of experience, but be open to others as well, and
Exactly.
see how that.
Yeah. And I in this podcast and my guests in some sessions coming up, we're going to have a little series on sound healing. They may not necessarily follow week after week after week, so there may be a little space in between, but I'm going to be providing you with, at the very least, 4 names, I think 5, and you can count on the fact that each one of the people coming up on my podcast are going to be reputable, credible sound healers that have years and years and years of experience and practice, much like you would find in the medical field a specialist who not only did the basic training, so to speak, in pre-med school, but then went on to do med school and then an internship and a residency in a specialty. It's a very similar situation, except there is no certificate, there is no license for sound healers at this point. So, having said that, it's time for me to once again say farewell. I know we ran a little longer today, but all in all, I think it was necessary because we wanted to get the message out there 2 or 3-fold that sound healing could indeed help. It could help heal of a condition you have. It could help alleviate some symptoms of grief. That overwhelming devastation you feel could be helped with some sound healing, or anger, or whatever it is, wherever you are in your grief journey. You need to take care of yourself, and part of taking care of yourself while you're grieving is doing whatever you possibly can to make yourself feel a little bit better. It'll never be all back to normal, as we like to say or know it. Basically, your life is now divided into a couple of sections, the before and the after. So we're in the after. Let's do something about it. So I will ask again that you tune in for another episode. And again, thank you so much for listening today. Please be healthy and take care as we all continue to live and grieve. Thank you, Rich, for joining me. See y'all next week.
Thank you again. Thank you again for having me.
Thank you so much for listening with us today. Do you have a topic that you'd like us to cover, or do you have a question from one of our episodes? Please email us at info@asiliveandgrieve.com and let us know. We hope you will find a moment to leave a review, send an email, and share with others. Join us next time as we continue to live and grieve together.